Hello and welcome to the Mets in the UK podcast, your home for Mets content in the UK. You can catch us every Tuesday on Spotify, YouTube, and all good podcast hosts. You can also find us on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and X at Mets in the UK, or use the hashtag MITUK to get involved. This week, it's just me and Tor. Tracy's on the IL and Joe's on her holiday, so it's just me and Tor. So how are you doing this evening, Tor?
I am as okay as we can be after the past week and half asleep after this morning, but that was worth it at least. Yeah, all good. How are you?
I'm good. Equally, I am feeling the effects of a West Coast start. As you say, it was well worth getting up for. But boy, am I tired. I've had 3 coffees today just to get me through the day. So yeah, let's do this before we both nod off. So looking back over the last week, it's been a difficult week for our Metsies. Mets lost the home series 2-1 against the Diamondbacks. Lindor, Marte, Alonso, Vientos, and Soto getting home runs. First one at Citi Field for Soto. Unfortunately, though, losing that series 2-1. The Mets then went on to lose the Cardinals series 2-1. Alonso and Nimmo hitting home runs over the series. There was a doubleheader on Sunday after the Saturday game got rained out, which meant one less bit of UK-friendly baseball. The first game of that doubleheader was game 34 of the season. As Gary mentioned during the broadcast, the Mets have lost the 34th game of every season since 2010, which is quite a bad omen. The Mets obviously losing the 34th game this year as well, carrying on that unwanted streak. Mets lost the series 2-1. And then early this morning, Mets beat the Diamondbacks away. First of a 3-game series there. Alonso and Lindor hitting home runs. Very close game, unwantedly close. Daniel Nunez giving up quite a few runs. Mets were 5-1 up. By all accounts, he did not have a good outing. Worth noting, he is coming back from quite a serious injury. This was to be expected, but nonetheless, nervous start to the day. Not what you want at 5 a.m. by any means. So Mets 3-4 over the last week. Last week on our prediction, we said 4-3. So we got the numbers right, just the wrong way around. Now, obviously, you watch every minute of every game. So what are your thoughts on the last week, Tor?
Do you know what? Every week, seemingly so far this year, we have been absolutely buzzing. We have been waxing lyrical about how great the boys have been. We've had positive scores for the week. So, do you know what? It was a bad week overall. It's fine. It's fine. We are still kicking ass. We are still top of the division. We are still comfortably so. We're still well up there in the whole of baseball. If anybody had given me this at the start of the season, I'd have gone, yeah, fine, thanks. So I'm not going to get down about it. There have been lowlights, of course, not least the injuries, which I know we'll get onto, but we can't downplay the impact that's had. Nunez's outing this morning, I almost said last night, was disappointing, but at the same time, good to see him back. So much as it probably didn't quite go to plan, I perhaps wouldn't have thrown him in at that point. It's great to have him back, especially the position that we're in right now. Jesse, again, we'll get on to losing him. That's been a definite low light for the week. I mean, Sunday for me was a bit of a killer. I spent all weekend being unwell in bed, did not get out of my bed pretty much all weekend. Sunday I was like, but it's okay. I have sport from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till about 2:30 in the morning. Great. Perfect. We had football, Premier League in the afternoon. Couldn't care less about what was going on with those games, but they were on. But then I had 2 Mets games. Managed to catch a bit of the Angels game because everyone knows I have a soft spot for the Angels. I had F1 and we had Jack Draper in the Madrid Masters tennis final. Nothing went my way. Absolutely nothing went my way. 3 losses in the baseball. Max Verstappen didn't even podium in the F1. And poor Jack lost the final. He put up a good fight, bless him, but he lost the final. So Sunday was a little bit of a downer, which doesn't happen often. But it was okay because last night we got lifted with the win, which was up until a point looking pretty convincing. And the next one as well, which was an added bonus. And there were so many people that were, so the end of the Knicks game kind of overlapped a little bit with the start of the Mets game. And there was so many people like me that was like trying to keep up with both. And you could see the attention shift from Knicks to Mets. It was quite amusing. Now, there's been some downers, but there's also been some greatness. Now, we had Soto's first home run at Citi Field, which of course got a lot of attention. We had Pete's 425-foot bomb last night, which amongst all of his home runs that he's had so far was one for the sticker book for sure. But please take a moment to indulge me whilst I show my appreciation for my boy Ty. And I keep saying it because he's my boy. Now, the reason that I love Tyrone Taylor so much is because, as a rule, I prefer defensive play over offensive. It's just the way I'm built. I just like it. But I also love that, as a rule, until he blows it out of the water, Tyrone Taylor is the kind of guy that just goes in, gets on, does his job, keeps his head down, solid, dependable. Love it, right? You always know what you're going to get. But then this week he decided to just stop letting me just covet him as being a nice little workman and just had a week for the ages. Get this, right? This week, he had his first home run of the season on Wednesday. He got MLB Player of the Week for that crazy diving catch that he was running away from, came from on Tuesday. If you've not seen that, A, where have you been? B, go look it up. I mean, that was just one of a number of incredible catches that he's made, even just this week. Over the last 7 days, he's been hitting at 550, 5 extra base hits, 6 runs scored, 3 RBI. His OPS is at 1,541. Just crazy. Insane. He is ahead of Pete in most of the batting stats for the past week. The boy is everywhere. On top of that, defensively, he's been incredible as well. Last night, he got his triple, which I loved. I mean, like, so early last night, he was just covered in dirt. Again, that's why I love him, right? He's that kind of player.
Yeah.
He gets dirty because he gets stuck in. Now, you know, I'm kind of a little bit gutted because he's been everywhere. And I'm like, no, it's my boy Ty. But also super amazing to be able to just plaster my boy Ty everywhere all of the time because he's just had an incredible week. So honestly, yeah, it's been pretty meh overall this week, but my boy Ty makes it all good.
He's definitely staking a claim for that centre field spot. like you say, he's really put in a shift over that last week. I just want to touch on, you talked about the doom sort of element of the last week. It's not all been negative by any means. There have been positives outside of Tyron Taylor. I'm going to just wind the clock back a little bit to the 23rd of April. Our illustrious owner, Steve Cohen, on Twitter. We need to keep riding this wave. There will be there will be a reverse at some point. Something special is happening at Citi Field. So, I mean, he called it. It's inevitable. It's the roller coaster of the baseball season. We can't win every game. We've said it before on the show. There's 162 games. You can't win them all. This was bound to happen at some point. Hopefully, selfishly, they're getting it out of the system now. And when I go at the end of the month, it's not going to be like this. But all joking aside, it's the roller coaster of the season. We're going to have some lows, we're going to have some highs. This week in particular, it's been quite a yo-yo week. Even if I think about, from the pitching side of things, we saw another good outing from Clay Holmes. We saw another good outing from Griffin Canning. I can see the look you're giving me. We've had some good, but then the reverse of that, like with Nunez, we've had some bad. And I don't think it's through a lack of trying. I think it's lots of things sort of all coming to a head at once. Like you mentioned, we've had injuries and issues that are going on there. Diaz has gone missing for like over a week, only to then show up again last night. There's lots of transition's probably the best word for the team at the moment. And it's hard to, I think, in any job, if there's that level of change and transition constantly going on, it's hard to keep a routine and keep churning things over. So I'm not surprised in the slightest, other than Steve's prediction that this was going to happen. I'm not surprised. And if you are new to baseball still after the London series, this is going to happen a lot. It happens a lot with the Mets. It's part of the joys of being a Mets fan. I think it's just a case of riding that wave and knowing that it's going to turn around, isn't it?
It is, and more so than for a long, long time. We know and can be confident in the knowledge that we have the quality. It's a long time since we have had top to bottom quality like we've got now. And the other thing to mention for the week, which is a highlight, but for low light reason, is how many debutants we've had this week. It's been crazy. But each time it happens, it's still special, despite the results this week. Let's, not forget that we've had Tidwell come up, and we've had, that we've been watching for a long, long time. We had Waddell come up. We had Urena up and back again. We, again, we'll get to that, I know, in the news. But these have been events, and these have been, highlights for these players and highlights for the organisation, and they've had varying degrees of success. But it's part and parcel of it. And like you said, we've had a lot of change within a week, which has just been it's been madness. So do you know what? The boys keep rolling, we keep rolling, and that's been the thing for me this week. There hasn't been a single point where it's looked like they've just gone, what's the point? They have kept going and kept fighting, which for me, with my to the last out, that's what I love to see. And that's why I can say that, because that is how they perform. That's how, I've said it before, it's one of the things that I've loved about them from day one. As an organisation, this team is completely different staff to that it was when I started following the team. But they've had that in them throughout. The minute we lose that, the minute I'll start falling out of love with them. Like that's
like you could, as if.
As
So
if.
we've talked a lot about the change there. It's probably a good point to go through the news and go through the merry-go-round of changes. Most of them have been bullpen related. Again, those of you that are new to this, or are following along, and this is your first sort of go around, what I'm about to go through is quite common. It is nothing to panic about. It's all to do with the rules and getting the most out of the depth that we have down in AAA. These players are signed at the beginning of, we talked about it before the season started, the number of depth signings we made that have been stashed in AAA. This is perfectly normal, even though it sounds like a soap opera of like who's coming, who's going. So without further ado, I'm going to go through this, and hopefully you're all still going to follow this by the time we get to the end. So to start the week off, Kevin Herget was optioned after the first D-backs game, which means he was sent back down to AAA. Brandon Waddell was called up to replace him, and by all accounts, Waddell did a pretty good job.
Did okay.
Danny Young went on to the IL with an elbow strain, which we've later found out he's going to need Tommy John.
Yep.
So Chris Davensky was called up to replace Danny Young for the bullpen. Ty Adcock and Genesis Cabrera were called up to then replace Waddell and Davensky after they'd played a game. And by all accounts, both of them had done all right, but it's a case of let's get some fresh arms in for the bullpen. At this point, we then found out that Jose Arena, after his horrific outing in the bullpen, he chose free agency rather than going back down to the minors. Arena has been picked up by the Blue Jays and is starting a game for them tonight. So quite what they're smoking in Toronto, I do not know, because if you've seen that guy pitch, having him as a starter, they must be crazy. So good luck, Toronto. You don't know what you're in for there. So after he elected his free agency, Austin Warren was called up for the Cardinals series. Ty Adcock was sent back down to AAA. At this point, Genesis Cabrera was still there. He was not sent back down. It was just Ty Adcock sent down. Austin Warren did a good job by all accounts. Very sort of surprising addition there. We then saw Blade Tidwell, like we talked about. He was called up to start the game in the doubleheader. Had some good stuff, but it all sort of fell apart very quickly for Tidwell. The nerves very much got to him. Control has been an issue in AAA from what I've heard from the people that regularly watch minor league baseball. So it wasn't really a surprise. I think he's got plenty to work on. And at 23, it's not something that we should be concerned about. It's going to happen. He's got years to develop. But Tidwell was then optioned after the game. Daniel Nunez was brought up for game 2. And then after game 2, Austin Warren was sent back. So after all of this sort of merry-go-round, we're left with Genesis Cabrera and Daniel Nunez, and everyone sort of has come, thrown a few innings, and then gone back down again. Lots of change. Hopefully you kept up with all of that. Couple of other sort of injury issues other than Danny Young needing Tommy John. So he's done for the season. AJ Minter, he's going to have lat surgery. That's the end of his season. Very disappointing. By all accounts, AJ seemed like a lovely guy, was doing good stuff for the Mets. Just very unfortunate. Again, that's another bullpen arm that we've needed. Another reason why we've had so much yo-yoing over the last week with all of these other players. And like you mentioned, Jesse Winker has a possible oblique injury in the Sunday game against the Cardinals. Brett Beatty's back, another yo-yo player. He's now back after a non-stint in AAA. Who knows what he's going to do this time? We can keep everything crossed, like always, for Brett. Hopefully he does some good stuff. On a more positive note, Pete Alonso was named National League Player of the Month, and Luis Angel Acuna was named National League Rookie of the Month for April. So well done to both of those. And last, before the news, congrats to the Manayas who are expecting. Clearly, Sean making good use of his time on the IL, filling in, not playing. So, all things said, lots has happened. hand has kind of been forced really for the Mets with these injuries to Young and MITUK and Winker. What are your thoughts?
So firstly, how good does it feel to have player and rookie of the month on our team?
Very good.
And of course, as I mentioned before, Tyrone got player of the week as well this week. So, you know, awards all round. Let's hope that maybe there's an MVP coming as part of that at the end of the year. We will see. As for all of the pitching changes, there's a couple of things to pull out there. Firstly, of all of them, Tidwell, I think, was the one that caused the biggest stir because he's been the one that everybody's been watching for an awful long time. His family got to be there, which was wonderful. He did do okay. He was literally, you know, as sold. He came up, he throws strikes, and he did start off okay, but once it started to unravel, it unraveled quickly. I might have been tempted at that point to, I mean, we did make a bit of a fist of it in the end, but I might have been tempted to leave him in for a little bit longer, purely to save some of the pen arms, given that we had the double header. The other thing that I want to pick up on with all of the changes, Cabrera, he has been excellent. So I'm not surprised that he's sticking around. I'm pleased that he's sticking around. I've been really, really impressed with what I've seen of him. I am devastated about Minter because he was solid. He was absolutely excellent. He didn't start kind of fidgeting when he came in. You know, I was a little more calm when I saw Minter coming. So that's a real disappointment. And Jesse, I mean, will we see him this side of All-Star? I'm not sure. 6 to 8 weeks, so possibly. I think it depends on how the recovery goes. It's a little bit of a concern how many of these kind of muscle type strains we're having, you know, lats and obliques. And, you know, I think we need to have a little look at the strength and conditioning that's going on there, because it's almost becoming pandemic. And Beatty was a bit of a worry to come up because he'd already been out of the lineup a little while at AAA because I think he'd hurt his toe or something. So, I mean, he must be okay-ish, but I suspect that's why he started on the bench. It'll be interesting to see if he starts tonight or not.
Yeah, I think the oblique thing, just to touch back on that, I can't help but wonder whether this is, we're seeing more of these injuries, like we're seeing more and more pitchers with Tommy John because they're trying to throw at 200 miles an hour on every pitch. I can't help but feel this current obsession, not just with the Mets, but like across baseball in general. The stat that seems to be over talked at the moment is exit velocity and how hard the ball comes off the bat when they hit it. And I don't really know where it's come from. It's kind of just sort of crept up out of nowhere, and it's suddenly like the hot thing of like, oh, Soto hit the ball at 110 miles an hour. And I can't help but feel that that movement of trying to swing the bat as hard as you can to get as much contact as you can, I almost wonder if that's the thing that's driving these lat and oblique injuries, because I don't necessarily think it's a strength and conditioning thing. I think it's just the repetitiveness, trying to overcompensate, trying to tear the face off the ball with every hit, that's what's leading to these injuries. And I've not done the research, I've not looked at other teams, but I almost wonder across the league with other teams, are we seeing the same sort of increase with oblique and lat injuries? Because if we are, then that suggests that this is a bit more of a trend than a Mets thing.
Perhaps.
Definitely one that needs to be looked into. But the other thing I want to say as well about all this change as well, just sort of bring this to a close, is how great this depth has been from AAA. We've called these guys up like Warren and Adcock and Davinsky and Waddell. no one's really done a horrendous job where it's been like, get them off the mound straight away. I know Nunez had a bit of an issue. Like we said, he's been injured. But we've got good depth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Down in AAA, and it's really refreshing to see. I know the pitching lab has a part in this, but I think it's also David Stearns and the signings he's made. We've got good pitching depth, and that's really going to serve us well as the season progresses.
Not there.
And of course, Rosie's decided to join us on the pod.
There's a change.
There we go.
Come on. No, that's right. Oh, there's
the video version of the pod if you're not doing so already.
Yeah.
Rosie's just gone full on in front of the webcam.
There we go. That'll do.
That'll do. Any closing thoughts on the news before we move on?
No, just congrats again to the Manias. There's going to be like a whole generation of former Met children growing up together. You know, we'll probably be able to make a team out of them at some point.
Hopefully, yeah. Why not? Let's bring them all back. Sign them to 15-year contracts. Get in early.
Exactly. But no, it's lovely. It's all good.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of looking ahead, the week ahead, we've got 6 fixtures, all being well with the weather. We've got 2 more games against the Diamondbacks on the road. The Wednesday game is UK friendly, about 8 o'clock. So that'll be much nicer than waking up at 2 in the morning.
Because I have plans on Wednesday night, of course. Typical. But it's fine. Obviously, I'll be keeping an eye on it. So
we know you'll be watching the game.
That's to watch it. But I will. You know, thankfully, I'm with my brother, who is well aware of my baseball watching habits. So
where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
After the Diamondback series, we've got 3 against the Cubs at home. Only the Sunday game is UK friendly from those, which is a bit of a disappointment. We've had quite a good run at weekends lately. Bit of a sad one there. And then we have next week the first of a series against the Pirates, which is also at home. So 6 games over the next week. Predictions go.
I think we are getting at least one of the remaining 2 D-backs games to get our own back, basically. You know, they come to our yard and pinch it from us. We're going to go to theirs, do the same. Why not? We have Peterson and Senga as well coming up. So, I you know, if it weren't for the last week, I'd probably be saying that we're going to sweep it. But, you know, let's not forget that the D-backs are playing some good, solid stuff. So,
yeah,
you know, we can't take it for granted. So I would say 1-1 from those 2. Honestly, I'm pretty nervous for the Cubs series. If anyone is not following kind of anything outside of our division, the Cubs are currently on fire. They're 22-14. They have their catcher, Carson Kelly, just hitting for fun. Now he's got 23 RBI in the last 20 games, 8 home runs already. And he's just one of those players that is literally, he's just literally living his best life. He's just like, okay, I'm just going to go out and play. Pete Crow Armstrong has also exactly. So he thankfully seems to be cooling off a little bit. I fear he is just building, getting ready to explode against us. So for those who aren't aware, Pete was one of our top prospects. We traded him in 2021 for Javi Baez and Trevor Williams, which at the time, you know, those guys came in and did great. But PCA has particularly, he was showing signs of it last year, but this year is just, he's exploded. Yeah. So I'm kind of hoping that his cool spell continues a little bit, but if he's back then we could be in trouble. Thankfully, not thankfully, I would never wish injury on anyone. But Imananga is on the 15-day IL, so we're not going to have to face him. He has been outstanding. So that gives me a little hope. I want to say we're going to take the series because it's at our house. So I'm really hoping that gives us just that bit of advantage. Everyone needs to get out to Citi Field and get behind them for that series, because I think it's going to be our toughest test to date at Citi Field. So let's say 2 from that, and we're going to beat the Pirates.
So that's
4-2.
4-2.
Yeah, but given that we're facing the Cubs, if it's 3-3, okay.
Yeah, I was going to say 3-3, purely because we've not been so hot this week. I think with all the other change and all the other stuff that's been going on, I think 3-3 is probably realistic. I'm not going to be a doomer and say 2-4, but it wouldn't surprise me either at the same time.
The other thing that that concerns me is, given how the rotation's been, I'm hoping that we don't get a bullpen game in there.
I can't help but feel it's going to happen, purely because Senga seems to be benefiting from 6 days of rest, and
we haven't really got anywhere else to turn at the moment. So
no, we haven't.
Blackburn's on his way back as well.
Who is?
Blackburn.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was a Sproat call up.
Maybe.
Either. It's possible, in the same way that Tidwell had his thank you, off you go, see you later. I wouldn't be surprised if they did it with Sproat as well, just so they've got some sort of data and numbers on him in the big leagues.
Yeah, perhaps.
But a bullpen game is also likely.
Yeah, that makes me a little bit nervous. But we will be with them to the last out, of course.
I don't think it makes me as nervous, in that, you know, Brazoban has shown he can start and he can go if he needs to. So I'm not too worried, but yeah, long-term bullpen burnout is the bigger worry than one bullpen game next week.
Yeah,
but we shall see. Like you said, to the last out is the only way.
Always.
Speaking of always, thank you those of you who are our regular listeners and always listening. We see your comments, your likes, your shares, all that good stuff. If you've enjoyed this, please feel free to comment. What do you think is going to happen over the next week? Have you enjoyed the bullpen rotation over the last week? Any of the stuff we've talked about tonight, let us know in the comments. Give us a repost, all that good stuff, so we can bring this to more people across the UK, Europe, and beyond. As is always the case, we will be back same time, same place next Tuesday. And all that leaves us to say is, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.